Hello everyone, feeper here, back with another video for you. This is a follow-up to the last one I did, which was sort of like an overview and guide to what the feast is and what the rules are and things. This will kind of be, how to tank in the feast. Things you want to look out for, things you want to be doing, things you don't want to be doing, role actions you want to prioritize more than others. And yeah. Now, before we sort of jump in too far into this, I do just want to state that I don't have any tournament experience playing this game. I haven't like gone to FanFest and played on the big stage or anything like that. I hope to, but most of my knowledge and experience PvPing comes from either other games, particularly MOBAs, playing those at a competitive level or semi-competitive level, and obviously playing ranked and training matches in this game. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making this video. I'd be talking out my ass. So yeah, just keep that in mind. I don't want to pretend like I'm speaking for the highest of PvP players out there, because I'm not. This is kind of a little bit more geared toward people who want to get into ranked and people who just want to try out PvP and don't want to just go in completely blind and have a terrible time. So yeah, I just want to get that quick disclaimer out of the way. And also, if you can't tell, this is sort of like an off-script impromptu video. So I'm going to be stumbling over my words a lot, so just bear with me. Alright, so let's kind of jump in here now. The main goal as a tank is to peel for your team and CC their team. Is someone really low? Go and CC their healer so your DPS can finish them off and they can't get healed. Is your healer about to die? Throw a cover on them or give them a heal or stun or slow or whatever the case may be to keep them alive. You're kind of bouncing between their backline, so like their squishies, their healer, DPS, and your backline, your healers and DPS, or healer and DPS. Excuse me. You don't have two healers. That'd be stupid. So yeah, there are times where you just want to go balls to the wall and kill someone and finish them off and get the medals, but generally speaking, excuse me, you're gonna be sort of running around a lot, making sure that your team is alive and making sure that theirs isn't doing what they want to do. You want to disrupt them as much as possible and facilitate your team winning as much as possible. So yeah, now if you want to get to your PvP hotbar, or not your PvP hotbar, your PvP profile, you can just go press P by default and go under main commands. It'll be right here. You can just drag it onto your hotbar. It has a bunch more information about your job and things like that. Now, another thing to note is your PvP hotbar is different when you enter the Wolves Den or any PvP match. One thing you notice right away is that your main 3-hit combo is actually just relegated to one button. This makes it really, really easy to just, press the same button over and over again. Back in Heavensward, excuse me, not Stormblood. Stormblood, they changed it to the way it is now, which I think was a really good change. Back in Heavensward, you had your entire hotbar and everything was doing different things and different durations and effects, and it was a little ridiculous. So this is definitely more streamlined while it's still keeping that same amount of depth, I feel. So they really did a good job with that. And the other thing to notice is that you have this adrenaline bar. This is basically a limit break, individual to each job. It's pretty much the same as what they are for, doing an extreme trial or something. Tanks, it's 25% damage reduction for 10 seconds on an instant cast. I use that with quotes because depending on the server tick, it can feel more like a 2-second cast time. Or if you try to use it as an off GCD, the animation's weird and clips, and it's just a bit strange. But, party-wide damage mitigation. Healers is just a big burst AoE heal. Melee DPS is a big single target. Casters is just a big circle, and then range is just a big line. Standard, basically the same as how it is in. With that out of the way, let's kind of go into what all of the role actions are. So I'll be starting with what I think are the best, and then kind of working my way towards the ones that I think are more situational and the ones that are bad. So I think the most useful two, at least in ranked and training matches, are going to be full swing and low blow. I'll start with full swing. 60-second cooldown, does a attack with a potency of 600, which is a decent chunk, and then increases the damage of the target's damage taken. Excuse me, I can't read. even though it's like noon. Increases the target's damage taken by 10% for 6 seconds. So this is really good if, you know, your DPS are going on a healer and you want to help them just burst them out, or if they're going on their DPS. Very, very strong in that regard. You can also use it situationally as like an off GCD to try and burst someone out. I don't recommend using it like that until you really understand the game a bit more. I think it's better to save it for the extra damage reduction or damage increase that people take, as opposed to trying to use it as an off GCD to finish up a kill, because you have to know that you're going to get that kill, otherwise you kind of waste the ability ish. You know, if you use it to try and finish a kill and you just barely don't get them, and then the healer like heals in the full, basically just wasted this. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, it's with that in mind, as long as you are using it when other people are attacking the target you hit, you're getting value out of this skill, which is really, really important. Now, low blow is the other ability that I think is really, really good. Orange potency attacks, so not quite as strong. Has a shorter cooldown though, with 45 seconds. And it has a 15 Yalm knockback. Now, originally I thought this ability was kind of bad. I was like, oh, I don't really know if I want to like knock back people. But actually really, really good. So the best, maybe not the best, but a really good use of this skill is if your tank, or if the enemy tank is like going on, I don't know, your healer or DPS or someone, you can just kick them away. And then they're going to have to use a gap closer that they don't want to use to get back in there, or they're just going to have to walk. It's also really good if like a full health samurai or dragoon is diving someone, you can just kick them away as well. Then they're going to have to use if you can force them to use sprint to get back into the fight, because you low blowed them as opposed to using it to get out, like that's a huge, huge win. So these two abilities I think are the most useful, because as long as you use them, as long as you, or excuse me, let me back up. They're the most useful because 90% of the time when you use them, it's going to be valuable. You know what I mean? Even if you don't recognize when to use low blow on a DPS, if you always use this to kick the tank away, it's useful for your team, because the enemy tank is having trouble CCing. Now, this, if you are attacking the same target as someone else and you full swing them, you're getting value out of it, because now the healer has to heal more and you're draining their mana, which is a big part of PvP. So these two abilities pretty much you're always getting use out of them. And the next two are a little bit more situational. They're still very good, but they're a little bit more situational, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but you can only have 2 of these active at a time, so you can't have all 5. It can be any combination of the 2, there's no restrictions like that, but you can only have 2 at a time. So next one I want to talk about is Reprisal. This functions pretty much the same as it does in like a raid. Damage reduction for 6 seconds on a 60-second cooldown, except it's 20% instead of 10. It's really useful when, their dragoon or samurai, or honestly even gunbreaker, is like trying to go ham. You can just hit them with this, and then the next 3 GCDs, roughly speaking, and any off GCDs they use are gonna have less damage. And even if the person recognizes that they have Reprisal on them, they're gonna say, okay, I am now doing less damage for 6 seconds, and I can use that 6 seconds to try and build up my gauge or whatever, or I'll save my burst ability for after this is over. But that 6 seconds, if they wait that time out and they use their burst after, the person they're trying to burst out could be back to full HP, So most of the time as well, when you use this, as long as you use it on people who are actually doing damage, you don't want to like use this on a healer, obviously you're getting value out of it. So I think Reprisal is also a pretty good option. I think these 3 are kind of the big 3 that you're going to see most of the time people using, just because they have the least risk and they have the most benefit to your team. Now Interject I think falls a little bit lower. 45-second recast, silences the target for 2 seconds. It just doesn't feel as impactful. And one thing to keep in mind is that this is, I don't want to say only useful when attacking a healer, but for casters, you can just break their cast by going around a piece of, not furniture, I don't know why I can't think of the word. There are obstacles on the map. I guess is the best way to call them. And if you just go around them and break line of sight, it breaks the cast. And a lot of the times also the caster will kind of be far away. So if you dive on them to try and interject them, it's going to be harder for you to get back to your team if you need to CC them. So this is not as useful on a caster. It's a little bit more useful on silencing a healer, but I think a lot of the time you can just stun the healer and it accomplishes the same thing. Although you could stun them and then follow it up with an interject, which is like 4 seconds and then not being able to cast. So that's really strong. But I think, you know, CCing their tank or reducing the damage output, your healer has to heal less, or just making someone take more damage is a little bit, it's easier to get better value out of, and it's just more applicable and requires less thought. So interject, I think, falls a little bit lower on the list for me. And then we have the last one, which is Rampart. And I guess since I'm talking about this last, you know, surprise, surprise, I think it's the worst one. This skill is just, it's just not really useful. Except for there's one situation where it's good. Every other situation, it's kind of like, eh. Because a lot of the times, you're not really going to be taking that much damage. You know, I guess you're a tank, so you have more defense, but, you know, unless you're a gunbreaker, you don't do as much damage as a DPS, and you're not keeping people alive as much, you know, with outright healing, more of an indirect way with CC, so you're not as big a target. You know, so reducing the damage that you take really isn't that big a deal because you're not taking that much damage. You know, the only time you're really going to die as a tank is if you just run into them at the start of the game and they just burst you out, or if your healer is dead and maybe one of the DPS are dead, then you're going to start to get, you know, focused out. So it's not super useful a lot of the times just because you're not taking a lot of damage. Now, however, the one situation where it is good is in combat, so I can't switch. Well, let me get out of combat here real quick. So striking dummy is really messing me up. The one situation where it is good is if you're a paladin. Will I switch now, game? Come on, game. There we go. So as a paladin, if you cover someone, you know, it's the same duration, or actually I think it's a less duration in PvP than it is in the actual game, but regardless, you know, in Stormblood you would take less damage. You would take their damage, but you would mitigate it automatically with cover. In this, you actually take more damage when you cover someone. So you take their damage, but you take an additional 20%. So a lot of the time, you know, when you cover someone, if the team is smart, they'll just turn to you and just burst you out and kill you immediately. So this is where Rampart comes in, actually gaining 5% mitigation when you use these two in conjunction. So, you know, that's a use for it, but I think other than that, Rampart's a little bit lackluster. It's going to sit on cooldown most of the time. I mean, you could make an argument for just like rushing into their team and popping Rampart so they can't do a lot of damage to you and they waste a lot of their abilities on you. That is an argument, and it definitely can be used like that too. I'd say that's the other situation where it's good, but I just think the other ones are more applicable and are going to help you win more than you taking less damage, because a lot of the times you just don't get attacked that much as a tank. At least at, you know, the ranked and training match level. Yeah, that's a brief overview of what all these abilities do, what ones I think are good and you should be using, and what ones I think are a little bit less useful, a little more situational. Now, kind of going back to what you want to be doing as a tank in PvP, you know, like I said earlier, you want to be CCing them that you're either peeling for your team or setting up for your team. Now, what's going to separate a good tank or a decent tank from a good tank is going to be, you know, recognizing when to clean up a kill and finish someone off, and when to CC, and more importantly, who to CC. You know, you might see a Dragoon diving your healer, be like, oh, I need to CC the Dragoon, when in reality, you actually need to be CCing the tank, because they're going to be CCing your healer so they can't get away from the Dragoon, or they can't heal themselves as much. The Dragoon can kill them easier, things like that. You know, those are the kind of quick decision-making things that you're just going to have to play the game a bunch to, you know, to get muscle memory and be able to recognize when to do what in what situation. But yeah, you're going to be jumping back and forth between their back lines, their squishies, their DPS and healer, and yours, and just trying to make sure that your team stays alive and the other team stays dead. That's really the main goal. I'll kind of go more into depth about that with, specifically with each tank and how they accomplish that role. Some of them are a little bit more focused on the CC side and do less damage, and others are more focused on the damage side but have less CC. So, we'll go over that in the next videos. But I just wanted to kind of give a quick. Oh, look at that! The sun's out. Oh, beautiful. I just wanted to give a quick overview of what all these role actions do. I think a lot of people choose ones that either are good but they aren't using them correctly, or just aren't as good. That'll be it for this one. Stay tuned for the next video. I think I'll be starting with Gunbreaker. I might just do them in the same order I did the overview thoughts video for just the jobs in general for PvE. And yeah, thanks for checking this out, guys. I hope this sort of guide helped you understand what to be doing as a tank if you're looking to get into PvP as a tank in 14, but you don't really know where to start. Hopefully this is helpful to you. And even if you have been PvPing a bit, hopefully you still got some insight from this. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.